voiced a little closer together. Sweet Adelines is all over the world, and our particular chorus, we have people from Moscow, people from Lewiston and Clarkston and Palouse and Colfax. We've had people as far away as Grangeville before. We love to sing, and if there's any ladies out there who love to sing, we practice Monday nights in Genesee because it's kind of central to all the places that we sing. So Monday nights, Genesee at St. John's Lutheran Church at 6:45, and if you're interested, grab one of us. We have carpools that come from all the different areas, and come enjoy singing with us.
Your candle on the water. Thank you so much. I love the music. I love the harmony. Okay, we're ready to start our program now. We're going to begin with a short video, followed by a presentation, as it says on your schedule. I think we'll stick with the schedule from now on. A narration and some slides that are relevant to this corporate anniversary. Okay, this is Abdu'l-Bahá in America. As mentioned in the video, Bahá'u'lláh and Abdu'l-Bahá were political. Oh, I gotta wait. Sorry, I got the wrong cue.
He came not as an immigrant or tourist, but as an invited guest, bearing the message of universal peace and the unity of the East and the West. He traveled across the nation from coast to coast, affirming the visionary view of America's future, addressing audiences in places such as New York, Washington, D.C., Boston, Montreal, Chicago, Minneapolis, Denver, San Francisco, and Elliott, Maine. He spoke on race unity, gender equality, and social justice, captivating the interests of philosophers, the clergy, journalists, artists, statesmen, and all strata of American society. His appeal for unity was to all. Born in Persia, exiled in his youth, and imprisoned for 40 years, he lived an exemplary life of service. His name was Abdu'l-Bahá. His title was Servant of Glory. He was the first Bahá. Whom did he encounter? What was it like to meet him face to face? What did this man of an advanced age, offer to the United States and Canada? And what implications do his journey and the talks he gave have for us today? Take a journey to 1912 in celebration of the centenary of his visit, and discover a chapter of American history destined to change the consciousness of a nation.
As mentioned in the video, Bahá'u'lláh and Abdu'l-Bahá were political prisoners for most of Abdu'l-Bahā's life. At age 66, in 1910, he was released and immediately made plans to visit Europe and America.
It is important for us to remember that Abdu'l-Bahá is the son of the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, Bahá'u'lláh. It is the revelation of Bahá'u'lláh that is the source and foundation of the Baha'i faith. Loved and revered by all the Baha'is, and lovingly referred to as Master, Abdu'l-Bahā's role in the history of the Baha'i faith is as protector, interpreter, and exemplar. His first ever public talk was given at the City Temple Church in London on September 10, 1911. He told the congregation, "The gift of God to this enlightened age is the knowledge of the oneness of mankind and of the fundamental oneness of religion." This is the only genuine color photograph of Abdu'l-Bahá. It was taken in Paris in 1911.
The first mention of the Baha'i faith in the United States was at the World Parliament of Religions, held in Chicago in 1893. The first American Baha'i was Thornton Chase, who became a Baha'i in 1895 after participating in a weekly study class for over a year with Ibrahim Khairallah, a Baha'i from Beirut. Chase visited Abdu'l-Bahá in Akka, Palestine in 1907 and died in Los Angeles in September 1912 during the time of Abdu'l-Bahā's visit to America. Abdu'l-Bahá made a special point of visiting his grave on October 19, 1912.
Abdu'l-Bahā's journeys in America lasted 239 days between April and December 1912. He visited major metropolitan centers and a number of small towns. Most of his cross-country travels were by train, which was the most convenient form of long-distance travel at that time.
Today, stories about Abdu'l-Bahā's travels, the people he met, the messages he shared, have become sort of an oral tradition among the Baha'is. The presentations he gave were immediately preserved by stenographers and can constitute a basis for study as well. Here are a few interesting stories of Abdu'l-Bahā's talks and encounters with friends across the United States.
Abdu'l-Bahā's first public address in America was at the Church of the Ascension in New York, where he spoke about the oneness of humanity. Here are excerpts from the editorial in the New York Times reporting on his presentation.
It is to be our privilege this morning, said Dr. Grant, to hear one who has come out of the East, a new and great herald of goodwill, one bearing a message of love to all mankind. Abdu'l-Bahá Abbas is a master of the things of the Spirit. He comes from that part of the world where men meditate, where contemplation was born. He teaches the fundamental unity of all religions, a truth in which this congregation believes profoundly. And we welcome here one who may help the material fervor of the Occident to gain a new peace by the infiltration of the harmonies of the Orient. Abdu'l-Bahá spoke in Persian with Dr. Freend, interpreting a phrase at a time. Our material civilization, the Persian teacher said, has progressed greatly with the perfection of the crafts and the forward steps of material science. But our spiritual civilization, that which is based on divine morals, has declined and become degraded. We should strive, he said, to make our material civilization the purest possible medium, the most unclouded glass, through which the light of our spiritual civilization must shine. One of the things that supports a spiritual civilization is peace, he said, and the body politic is in need of universal peace. But the oneness of humanity, the human solidarity, which has been the message of all the prophets, will be achieved only through the spiritual power, for neither racial distinctions nor patriotism can further it. The oneness of humanity will come with the supremacy of the spiritual civilization, and not while, as now, we are submerged in the sea of materialism. These things Abdu'l-Bahá said in the few moments that he spoke, before he returned to his seat beside the altar. While the offering was being taken, those seated near the front could see him delving amid his robes, and finally his hand emerged with a bill that found its way to the plate.
For 3 years, Abdu'l-Bahá tirelessly addressed thousands of people in both North America and Europe, including clergymen, journalists, academics, diplomats, philosophers, suffragettes, and social reformers. He also, perhaps most importantly to him, met with and attended to the needs of the poor. On April 19th, he met with over 400 indigent men at the New York Bowery Mission. Here are some of the things he said to them.
Abdu'l-Bahá began his presentation to the men at the Bowery by saying, "Tonight I am very happy, for I have come here to meet my friends. I consider you my relatives, my companions, and I am your comrade." He said, "You must be thankful to God that you are poor, for Jesus Christ has said, 'Blessed are the poor.' He never said, 'Blessed are the rich.'" He said, too, that the kingdom is for the poor, and that it is easier for a camel to enter the needle's eye than for a rich man to enter God's kingdom. Therefore, you must be thankful to God that although in this world you are indigent, yet the treasures of God are within your reach. And although in the material realm you are poor, yet in the kingdom of God you are precious. He spoke about the poverty of all the manifestations of God, in particular Moses and Jesus Christ, drawing parallels between his audience and sufferings of God's prophets. Abdu'l-Bahá said, "Bahá'u'lláh admonished all that we must be servants of the poor, helpers of the poor, remember the sorrows of the poor, associate with them, for thereby we may inherit the kingdom of heaven." He concluded by saying, "So, my comrades, you are following in the footsteps of Jesus Christ. Your lives are similar to his. Your attitude is like unto his. You resemble him more than the rich do. Therefore, we will thank God that we have been so blessed with real riches. And in conclusion, I ask you to accept Abdu'l-Bahá as your servant." At the end of this meeting, Abdu'l-Bahá stood at the Bowery entrance to the mission hall, shaking hands with 400 or 500 men and placing within each palm a piece of silver.
It seems that only men were allowed into the Bowery to hear Abdu'l-Bahá speak. Here is a story about some boys who really wanted to meet Abdu'l-Bahá.
Bahá'ís, at the time a Unitarian minister, describes his soul-stirring encounters with Abdu'l-Bahá in his book, Portals to Freedom. It was a habit for Mr. Ives to visit the home of Edward and Carrie Kennedy each Sunday afternoon after service at his church. During Abdu'l-Bahā's time in New York, he stayed at the Kennedy homes, and Mr. Ives often was able to see him. One such Sunday afternoon, Mr. Ives looked out the window and saw 20 to 30 boys racing up the stairs. Mrs. Kennedy exclaimed in delight that she did not think they would actually come. She explained that a few days prior, as Abdu'l-Bahá walked to the Bowery to speak, he was accompanied by a large entourage, many of them Persian, and their robes and strange hats made quite a sight. Soon a large group of boys were following. Mrs. Kennedy dropped behind to speak to the boys, who expressed disappointment that they were not allowed into the Bowery for the talk. To accommodate them, Mrs. Kennedy invited them to her home to meet with Abdu'l-Bahá in person. The boys crowded into Abdu'l-Bahā's room, where he had welcomed them with enthusiasm, smiles, laughter, and a clasping of hands and shoulders as he was a boy himself. Among the last to enter was an African-American boy of dark complexion, about 13 years of age. He was the only African-American among the group, and entered the room with hesitation, evidently fearing that he might not be welcome. When Abdu'l-Bahá saw him, his face lighted up with a heavenly smile. He raised his hand in welcome and exclaimed, "Here was a black rose." Abdu'l-Bahá often used the analogy of different colored flowers in the garden to explain the diversity of mankind. He said many times that we are the flowers of one garden, the leaves of one tree. The room fell silent, and all eyes were upon the boy, whose face lit up with happiness and love. The other boys looked at him with new eyes. I was ventured to say that the boy may have been called a black many things before, but never a black rose. Mr. Ives stated that the atmosphere of the room changed. The boys glanced again and again at the African-American boy with very thoughtful looks. The scene brought visions of a new world in which every soul would be recognized and treated as a child of God. Mr. Ives thought, what would happen to New York if these boys could carry away such a keen remembrance of this experience that throughout their lives, whenever they encountered any representative of any race and colors to be found in that great city, they would think of them and treat them as different colored flowers in the garden of God. To celebrate the meeting, Abdu'l-Bahá shared a large box of chocolates with the boys, purposely choosing the largest and darkest piece for the African-American boy. He placed his arm around the boy with a radiant look, and the radiance filled the room. There can be no doubt that all the boys caught his meaning.
Abdu'l-Bahá often emphasized the richness of human diversity. Children, those of you who have received your gift boxes, if you look in your gift bag, I think you'll find some coins and a small box of candy to remember these stories of Abdu'l-Bahá. Now we're going to give away 2 more prizes. So then we'll come up and then have somebody draw. Did you find some? Oh, good for you. You found a coin. No.
Oh, myself. No. I can't do that. You're trying to I know what it is. I'll just use it as a laundry guy. Luann Scott.
She put the Sweet Adelines together.
Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I can look
Okay, well, we have, to remember the story of the Bahá'ís, Abdu'l-Bahá brought 4 or 500 silver coins in a green pouch. We have $20 worth of quarters in a green pouch. And it's a wonderful talk. Bill Coachman. You can get a head start on your garden. We have some start on your kitchen counter tomatoes you can transplant when the freezing finally stops in about 6 months or so.
Abdu'l-Bahá arrived in Chicago on April 29th. During his time in that city, he gave several public talks, including one at Hull House, to an audience that far exceeded the auditorium's capacity of 750 people. He met with many groups outside his hotel and also spent time at Lincoln Park Zoo. His visit to Chicago is most significantly marked by the laying of the dedication stone of the Baha'i House of Worship, located just outside the city, in the city of Wilmette. Abdu'l-Bahá stated that his father, Bahá'u'lláh, commanded that places of worship be built for all religionists of the world, that all religions, races, and sects may come together within its universal shelter, that the proclamation of the oneness of mankind shall go forth from its open courts of holiness.
Corey True, one of the first American Baha'is, rallied supporter believers throughout the U.S. to have the first Baha'i house of worship built in Chicago area. With Abdu'l-Bahá's guidance, she identified the eventual location of the building on a bluff in Wilmette overlooking Lake Michigan. The Baha'is purchased the land and started gathering on the site for prayer meetings even before ground was broken.
While laying the dedication stone is a celebrated event, the stone itself has a unique story of service, faith, and unity.
Esther Taubin, known by her friends as Nettie, was an early Baha'i in the Chicago area. She was unable to contribute to the building of the temple monetarily and set her mind on finding a stone to mark the site. Nettie went to a local construction site where the foreman directed her to a pile of limestone blocks, seen as unfit for their project. Nettie selected a large block, and over the course of 2 days, with the assistance of her brother and elderly neighbor, 2 strangers, and a paperboy, managing to transport the block via a baby buggy, 2 streetcars, and a homemade wagon to the future temple site. In the months ahead, the stone served as a focal point for Baha'i gatherings. Other stones were reportedly sent by Baha'is from around the world, including Abdu'l-Bahá himself. Yet none of these ever reached the temple grounds. It came to be that on May 1st, 1912, it was Nettie's stone that Abdu'l-Bahá called for to mark the dedication. The stone, which the builders rejected, became the cornerstone of the Baha'i house of worship in the Western world. By dedicating the temple with Nettie's stone, Abdu'l-Bahá admonished that the outer edifice is a symbol of the inner, which was built on faith and in the Baha'i dispensation was dedicated to unity. After the stone was placed and Abdu'l-Bahá pushed the earth around it, he declared, "The temple is already built." While most cornerstones are set in the prominent location on the outside of the building, Nettie's stone may be found in the visitors center in a place of honor inside a room set aside for prayers and contemplation.
It was at this dedication ceremony that Abdu'l-Bahá revealed the prayer for America. You can see this prayer and get a copy yourself on the table over here where the materials are, the red, one with the red tablecloth, are a little card that have this prayer printed on it. So if you are interested in what it does, it happens to be a prayer that I say every day for our country because I think our country needs all the prayer it can get. So that's my personal editorial. Okay, so be aware that they're over there and help yourself when you're finished.
In public addresses and private conversations across the country, Abdu'l-Bahá made it very clear that in the teachings of Bahá'u'lláh, men and women are considered equal. He used the analogy of a bird to describe gender equality, stating, "The world of humanity is possessed of 2 wings, the male and the female. So long as these 2 wings are not equivalent in strength, the bird will not fly. Until womankind reaches the same degree as man, until she enjoys the same arena of activity, extraordinary attainment for humanity will not be realized."
Abdu'l-Bahá considered this teaching to be peculiar to the teachings of Baha'u'lláh, for all other religions have placed man above woman. However, although Abdu'l-Bahá considered the equality of the sexes as a spiritual reality, he recognized that in the social realm there are many inequalities of education and opportunity that held women back from full participation in society. It was this situation that he called upon America to remedy.
Abdu'l-Bahá frequently linked the advancement of women with the cause of international peace and met with some women who were active in the peace movement, including Jane Addams, founder of Hull House in Chicago, and the first American woman to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and Sarah Farmer, founder of Greenacre.
Greenacre, the first Baha'i school in America. Sarah Jane Farmer opened a hotel in Elliott in 1890 with the vision of offering conferences on progressive subjects in sciences, arts, and religion, open to all races and creeds. In 1894, she dedicated Greenacre to the ideals of peace and unity and founded the Greenacre Conferences. She raised the world's first known peace flag, the 36-foot long banner of white with the word peace spelled out in green lettering. Each year, the flag would raise, followed by lectures and discussion that brought people from around the world together for the rest of the summer. Sarah became a Baha'i in 1900 after traveling to Palestine and meeting Abdu'l-Bahá in person. She then added the Baha'i teachings to the material offered at the Greenacre Conferences. 5 talks were delivered by Abdu'l-Bahá between August 16 and 17 at Greenacre. The talks focused on investigation of truth and the Son of Reality. He also visited both a boys' and girls' camp, which had pitched tents on the grounds. Being highly sociable and an avid walker, he also went into the nearby village of Elliott and visited residents door to door. Today, Greenacre is a historic Baha'i center of learning and continues to promote ideas such as the oneness of humankind, world peace, race unity, and the equality of women and men.
Abdu'l-Bahá, in appearance, was a man of medium height, though to all who met him he gave the impression of such majesty that he seemed much taller. His beard was flowing and white. His head covering, whether a turban or a tarbush, was white also. But meeting him, none of these details were even noticed. It was only the spirit one felt, and the outpouring love. Love filled him and flowed out from him to bathe and encompass everyone in his presence.
And sometimes this great love and glory was strongly felt. This is the story of a coal miner in California who walked many miles to meet Abdu'l-Bahá, who of course spoke that evening, as they always did, through an interpreter. The coal miner became more and more impatient. Finally, unable to stand it any longer, he leaned over toward the man sitting next to him. "Why does that man continually interrupt the master?" he asked. The man explained, "Abdu'l-Bahá is speaking in Persian. It must be translated." "Translated?" The coal miner was outraged. "Nothing Abdu'l-Bahá says needs translating. Anybody can understand him."
In his travels, Abdu'l-Bahá was working to build divine civilization. On the one hand were the examples he gave us in how he lived his life. On the other, he spoke directly on how to build a new civilization and promulgate world peace. He said civilization was of 2 types, material and divine. He said that philosophers founded the material, while the prophets established the latter. He pointed out that material advancement alone is insufficient for peace. In order to establish everlasting prosperity, he stated that spiritual perfection must be obtained first. Those who Abdu'l-Bahá had praised spent their lives selflessly sacrificing for the betterment of the world. As is the case now, the year 1912 was also an election year. On the morning of October 12th, with the election imminent, Abdu'l-Bahá described the sort of person who should be elected to the position of the president. The president must be a man who does not insistently seek the presidency. He should be a person free from all thoughts of names and rank, Rather, he should say, I am unworthy and incapable of this position and cannot bear this great burden. Such persons deserve the presidency. If the object is to promote the public good, then the president must be a well-wisher of all and not a self-seeking person. If the object, however, is to promote personal interests, then such a position will be injurious to humanity and not beneficial to the public. Later that day, someone asked him why some people's desires are met and others not. Abdu'l-Bahá explained that human beings were continually seeking to advance. He again pointed out the difference between material and spiritual advancement, saying, he can never find peace but through effort and resignation, so that notwithstanding all efforts in worldly affairs, the human heart remains free and happy. Later in his trip, during the conversation with Florence Kahn, he also touched on the subject of the presidency. He said, the time will come when the presidency will go begging. So advanced will civilization have become that no one will want to leave his social and humanitarian tasks to take the time to assume the presidency.
Abdu'l-Bahá dedicated his entire life to serving all of humanity. He did so to such an extent it became his identity. He was knighted by the British Crown in 1918 for feeding the poor in Palestine during the Turkish occupation in World War I. A Baha'i in the West wrote Sir Abdu'l-Bahá a letter asking him about his station, as the press often referred to him as a prophet and even the return of Christ. His response was, my station is Abdu'l-Bahá, my name is Abdu'l-Bahá, my qualification is Abdu'l-Bahá, my praise is Abdu'l-Bahá, my title is Abdu'l-Bahá. His given name was Abbas, but he preferred this title, which in English means servant of glory.
In 1898, the first pilgrimage of American Bahá'ís to meet Abdu'l-Bahá in the Holy Land was led by Phoebe Hearst. She was a generous benefactor to many worthy causes, particularly those that advanced women and the faith. After her pilgrimage, Abdu'l-Bahá sent his greetings, particularly to that one who has proved that it is possible for a camel to pass through a needle's eye. While Abdu'l-Bahá was in San Francisco, he received an invitation from Phoebe Hearst to her mansion in Pleasanton, and on October 13th, he traveled there. He spent considerable time in the nursery, examining some of the rare specimens, and asked that seeds from some be sent to the Holy Land for use around the shrines of the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh. The next day, Mrs. Hearst encouraged Abdu'l-Bahá to speak about the teachings of the cause, as she had not done so openly to her relatives. Abdu'l-Bahá promptly gave an overview of the faith and its principles. When he finished, Mrs. Hearst told stories of her time in Akka. When Abdu'l-Bahá was about to leave the next day, he called for all the servants of the household, the maids, cooks, orderlies, and the butler. He thanked each one for their services and gave each 2 British guinea coins. This act of generosity and majesty left Mrs. Hearst's wealthy guests humbled. Mrs. Hearst asked to be allowed to accompany him back to San Francisco, and he gave his assent, using the time to tell her, the cause of God is sanctified from all political power and worldly affairs. Among the divine teachings are trustworthiness, detachment, and sanctity. So if you should see a man coveting property and evincing greed toward the wealth of others, know that he is not of the people of Bahá. The people of Bahá are they who, should they happen to come upon a valley of gold and silver, would pass by it like lightning in utter disregard.
Okay, for those children who are still here, Did you guys find some seeds in your gift bag? Are there seeds in there? I don't see anybody nodding. Yes. Okay, these aren't exactly like those sent to Abdu'l-Bahá from Mrs. Hurst's garden. But I bet they'll grow in your garden and perhaps help you to remember this story.
The last formal presentation that Abdu'l-Bahá made in America was to the Theosophical Society of New York on December 4th, 1912, where he spoke about the harmony of science and religion and the kingdom of God. He said, our purpose is to show that the divine sovereignty, the kingdom of God, is an ancient sovereignty, that it is not an accidental sovereignty. The divine bounty is ever flowing, and the rays of the sun of truth are continuously shining. Thus there have been many holy manifestations of God. 1,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, 1 million years ago, the bounty of God was flowing. The radiance of God was shining. The dominion of God was existing. He went on to say, the holy manifestations of God come into the world to dispel the darkness of the animal or physical nature of man, to purify him from his imperfections, in order that his heavenly and spiritual nature may become quickened, his divine qualities awakened, his perfections visible, his potential power revealed, and all the virtues of the world of humanity latent within him may come to light. In his conclusion, Abdu'l-Bahá said, I have been in America 9 months and have traveled to all the large cities, speaking before various assemblages, proclaiming to them the oneness of the world, of humanity, summoning all to union, harmony, and oneness. I have indeed received the greatest kindness from the American people. I look upon them as a noble nation, capable of every perfection. Tomorrow I am going away to Europe, and now I bid farewell to you all, seeking for you the divine mercy, the eternal glory, the everlasting light, and I pray that you may attain the highest station of humanity. I am greatly pleased with this meeting. My happiness is great. I shall never forget you. You shall always live in my thoughts. I shall always pray and supplicate before the kingdom of God and seek heavenly blessings for you.
Elena, you're on. This is the last floor prize.
All right. You want to go to me?
Sure.
Jeffrey, you still here? Yeah.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad!
It's okay, we'll bring it to him. There's chocolate coming, but I take him before it comes out. You won, Jeff. Promise to keep your chocolate.
He was working so hard, he didn't even want people to receive the gift.
As Abdu'l-Bahá boarded the Celtic for his voyage to Europe on the morning of December 5th, 1912, he shared these parting words with those attending. He is God. This is our last day and my last meeting with you. In a few minutes, our steamer will leave these shores, and this is my last exhortation to you. I have repeatedly spoken to you and invited you to realize the oneness of humanity. I have impressed upon you that all human beings are the servants of the same God, and God is kind to all. He provides for all and gives life to all. In the presence of God, all are his servants, and his bounties are equally distributed among all. We must also be kind to the people of the world and forget all religious, racial, patriotic, and political prejudices. The whole earth is one globe. All nations are one family. All are the servants of one God.
Thank you, dear friends, for your patience during our program. Please don't forget to visit the information table and take one of the prayers for America and an invitation to the Baha'i Informational Fireside Chat at the home of Connie and Tony Driver. It'll be Friday at 7.
On behalf of the Baha'is of the Palouse, welcome to a new springtime. Welcome to a new year. Happy Naw Rúz.